I still remember the first day I saw him. It was raining so hard that morning and I was late for work again. My umbrella had flipped inside out, and I was drenched by the time I reached the office door. That's when he appeared, holding out his own umbrella, calm as ever, as if the storm outside didn't touch him. He looked at me with a quiet smile, one of those rare smiles that reach the eyes. "You're new here, right?" he asked, his voice low, kind and steady. I nodded, embarrassed, and thanked him. That was how I met Daniel. For the next 3 years, we worked side by side in the same department. He was the kind of person who never drew attention, always early, always focused, never part of the gossip or the noise. While everyone else competed for recognition, Daniel stayed in the background, quietly getting everything done. People either ignored him or underestimated him, but not me. Something about him felt different. There was a warmth beneath his calm, something I couldn't quite name. Maybe it was the way he listened when I spoke, how he always seemed to know when I was having a bad day, or how he'd leave my favorite coffee on my desk without saying a word. First, I thought he was just being kind, but over time I started noticing things, how his gaze lingered when he thought I wasn't looking, how he remembered small details about me that I had forgotten myself. Still, Daniel never crossed a line. He kept his distance. Professional, respectful, unreachable. And maybe that's why I started falling for him without realizing it. I didn't even know when it began. Maybe it was the day he stayed late to help me finish a report, or when he defended me during a meeting when our boss unfairly blamed me for an error. That's when I started to see him, not just as a coworker, but as someone who made the office feel like a softer place. But I wasn't brave enough to admit it, not even to myself. Then came the rumors. People said Daniel was too quiet, too mysterious. Some joked he was hiding something. Others said he had connections with the upper management, that he was some kind of spy. The gossip grew cruel, and Daniel never defended himself. He just smiled as if none of it mattered. One day during lunch, I finally asked him, "Why don't you say something? Why let them talk about you like that?" He looked at me for a long moment before answering. "Because truth doesn't need defending," he said softly. "People will believe what they want to believe." I didn't understand him then, but now looking back, I realized that every word he said carried more meaning than I knew. The months passed, and Daniel became even quieter. He'd often stare at his phone, lost in thought. Sometimes he'd vanish for hours, saying he had to take care of something urgent. I told myself it wasn't my business, but deep down it bothered me. One night, after everyone had left, I saw him standing by the window, looking out at the city lights. There was something heavy in his eyes, something that scared me. "Daniel," I said softly, "are you okay?" He turned to me, startled, as if he hadn't realized I was there. Then he smiled, that same calm smile I'd known since the first day. "Yeah, just thinking." "About what?" He hesitated, then said, "About how fast everything changes. One day you think you have time, and the next, it's gone." I didn't know what to say. There was a sadness in his tone that made my chest tighten. After that night, things started to feel different between us. There was a tension, invisible but constant, like a thread pulled too tight. Then came that day. It was a Monday morning. Everyone was in a rush, preparing for the quarterly review. The office buzzed with energy, but something felt off. When I walked in, I saw our manager standing at Daniel's desk, holding a folder. Daniel sat still, his hands folded neatly on the table. The room fell silent as the manager's voice cut through the air. "Daniel Kim, you're being terminated effective immediately." My heart stopped. "What? Why?" I blurted out before I could stop myself. The manager ignored me and handed Daniel an envelope. "Company policy. You're free to collect your things." Everyone stared. Daniel didn't argue, didn't plead. He just stood up slowly, nodded once, and thanked the manager. He didn't even look at me. I felt like the ground had disappeared beneath me. I wanted to scream that it wasn't fair, that Daniel didn't deserve this. But he walked past me, calm as always, his expression unreadable. Later that afternoon, I found him alone in the parking lot, his car packed with boxes. "Daniel," I called out, running toward him. He stopped but didn't turn around. "What happened? Why are they doing this to you?" He sighed and leaned against the car, finally meeting my eyes. There was a weight in his gaze that made me shiver. "It doesn't matter," he said quietly. Sometimes it's better this way. No, I said, shaking my head. You can't just leave. You didn't do anything wrong. He smiled faintly. You always believe the best in people. That's one of the things He stopped himself, as if swallowing the rest of the sentence. One of the things you what? I asked, my voice trembling. He looked away. Nothing. Just thank you for always being kind. And then he opened the car door. But I couldn't let him leave. I grabbed his hand. Please tell me the truth. What's going on? He froze. His hand tightened around mine for a moment before he gently pulled away. If I tell you, he said, you'll see me differently. And I can't bear that. Daniel, please. He exhaled slowly. Not here. Not now. And then he got into his car and drove away. I stood there in the fading light, watching the red of his taillights disappear down the road. My heart ached in a way I couldn't explain. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every moment, every word, every silence between us. What was he hiding? Why wouldn't he defend himself? Days passed. He didn't show up, of course. His desk was cleared, his name removed from the door. The office felt emptier, colder. Then one afternoon I found an envelope on my desk. No name, no note, just my name written in his handwriting. My heart pounded as I opened it. Inside was a folded letter. I hesitated, then began to read. I know you'll be angry that I didn't say goodbye properly, but if you're reading this, it means you couldn't stop yourself from asking questions, and I owe you the truth. My hands shook. 3 years ago, I joined this company for one reason, to protect someone. You. I froze. You didn't know, but your father used to work here. He was one of the senior accountants who discovered something illegal going on inside the company. When he tried to expose it, they destroyed him. I was his friend. I owed him everything. I couldn't breathe. My father had died when I was still in college. I knew he'd worked here, but no one ever told me the details. Before he died, he asked me to promise that I would look out for you. Make sure they never did to you what they did to him. That's why I stayed quiet. Why I took the blame for things that weren't mine. Because I couldn't let them fire you. Tears blurred my vision. The day I met you, you reminded me of him. His kindness, his stubborn honesty. I wanted to tell you everything, but I couldn't. I was under surveillance for years. They wanted me gone, but I lasted this long because of you. You made it bearable. I pressed my hand over my mouth, trying not to cry. I was fired because I took responsibility for something that would have fallen on you. It's better this way. You'll be safe now. And there's one more thing. I lied when I said I didn't care. I've loved you since the day it rained. The letter slipped from my hands. I felt my knees weaken, and I sat on the edge of my desk, shaking. Everything I thought I knew about Daniel, about my father, about the last 3 years, everything had changed in a single moment. He loved me, and he'd been protecting me all along. But he was gone. I ran out of the office, the letter clutched in my hands, desperate to find him. I didn't know where he lived, but I remembered the small coffee shop he used to go to every Friday evening. Maybe he'd be there. It was raining again, just like the first day we met. When I got to the cafe, my heart nearly stopped. He was there, sitting by the window, staring out at the rain. I froze at the door. He looked up, and for a moment it felt like time had stopped. When he saw me standing there, soaked and breathless, his eyes widened in disbelief. For a second he didn't move. Then he stood up slowly, as if unsure if I was real. "Why are you here?" he asked softly. I walked toward him, trembling, holding the letter in my hands. "You think you can disappear after writing something like this?" He glanced at the letter, then back at me. "You weren't supposed to read it yet." "Then when?" I demanded, my voice breaking. "After you vanished forever? After I kept wondering why the only person who ever truly cared about me walked away without saying goodbye." He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "It's complicated, Mia. You don't understand what you're getting into." "I understand enough," I said, my eyes filling with tears. "You let them destroy your life to protect mine. You took the blame for something I didn't even know existed. Why would you do that, Daniel?" He hesitated, his jaw tightening. "Because I made a promise. To your father. And because..." He stopped again, his voice low. "Because I couldn't stand the thought of seeing you suffer the way he did." For a moment, the world around us went silent. The sound of the rain outside faded, replaced by the sound of my own heartbeat. You loved him that much? I whispered. He looked at me, and this time there was no mask, no calm facade. Just raw pain. He saved my life once. When everyone turned their backs on me, he didn't. He believed in me. And when I lost him, I swore I'd protect the one thing he loved most in this world, you. My chest ached. I took a shaky step closer. And what about you? Who protects you, Daniel? He gave a sad smile. People like me don't get that kind of luxury. I shook my head. You don't get to say that. Not after everything you've done. He looked away, his voice barely audible. You should go, Mia. If they find out we talked, they might come after you again. I can't let that happen. I don't care, I said, my voice trembling. You can't just disappear from my life like this. Not after everything. Mia. No, listen to me. I stepped closer, tears spilling down my cheeks. You said you loved me. You said you've loved me since the day it rained. I've spent 3 years pretending not to feel the same thing because I thought it was impossible. But it wasn't, was it? It was real all along. His eyes softened. You shouldn't say things like that. Not now. I mean it, I whispered. You can't ask me to walk away knowing the truth. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he reached out, gently brushing the wet hair from my face. His touch was hesitant, almost reverent. You're making this harder than it already is. Then stop making it hard, I pleaded. Let me help you. He shook his head. You don't understand what these people are capable of. The corruption your father tried to expose, it didn't die with him. They've been watching me since the beginning. If I stay close to you, I'll put you in danger. I swallowed hard, tears streaming freely now. So you're just going to run for the rest of your life? He looked away, his jaw clenched. If it keeps you safe, yes. I wanted to scream to make him stay, to undo every lie that had led us here. But when I looked into his eyes, I realized he'd already made peace with his decision. So I did the only thing I could. I stepped forward and wrapped my arms around him. For a moment he froze. Then his arms came around me, strong and desperate, like he was holding on to something he knew he had to let go of. I don't want to lose you, I whispered against his chest. You won't, he murmured. Not really. You'll move on. You'll be happy. That's all I ever wanted. I shook my head, gripping his shirt. How can I be happy knowing you're out there alone? He didn't answer. We stayed like that for what felt like forever. Two people suspended in time, surrounded by the quiet hum of rain against glass. Finally, he pulled back just enough to look at me. Promise me something. What? Promise me you'll live your life. Don't let what your father and I did define you. You're stronger than both of us ever were. I wanted to say yes, but the word caught in my throat. I could only nod. He smiled softly, his eyes glistening. That's my girl. And then before I could stop him, he leaned forward and pressed his lips to my forehead. A gentle, lingering kiss that said everything he couldn't put into words. When he stepped back, I knew it was goodbye. He turned, walked toward the door, and disappeared into the rain. I ran after him, bursting out onto the street, but he was gone. The road was empty except for the echo of tires on wet pavement and the faint scent of his cologne lingering in the air. I stood there, drenched, broken, clutching his letter to my chest as the rain fell harder. For days after that, I kept hoping he'd call, or write, or come back. But he didn't. Weeks turned into months. I tried to bury myself in work, but the office wasn't the same without him. His empty desk felt like a wound that wouldn't heal. Sometimes I'd catch myself turning to say something, forgetting he wasn't there anymore. The silence that followed always cut deeper. Then one evening I received an email. No sender name, just a single word in the subject line. Safe. My heart stopped. I opened it. Don't look for me. I'm fine. Keep your promise. D. I read it over and over, tears streaming down my face. He was alive. Somewhere out there he was still watching over me. But I knew I had to let him go. Years passed. The company eventually faced a major investigation. The same executives who had destroyed my father's name were exposed and arrested. Someone had leaked their files anonymously. I didn't need to guess who it was. Daniel had kept his promise, until the very end. After the scandal, I left the company. I needed to start over. For the first time in my life, I felt free to make choices that were truly mine. But I never forgot him. Every time it rained, I thought of that day, of the umbrella he held out to me, of the quiet way he smiled. It wasn't until 3 years later that I saw him again. I was walking home from work one evening, the city glowing in golden light after a drizzle. I stopped by a small bookstore I'd never noticed before. Something about it drew me in. When I stepped inside, the smell of old paper and coffee filled the air. And then I froze. Behind the counter, sorting through a stack of books, was Daniel. He looked different. Older. Softer somehow. His hair was longer, his eyes a little tired. But they were still the same eyes that once saw right through me. He looked up, and when our gazes met, time folded in on itself. "Mia," he whispered. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. I just stood there, tears already spilling. He came around the counter slowly, almost afraid that if he moved too fast, I'd vanish. "You're supposed to be gone," I said through a trembling laugh. "I was," he replied. "But you kept your promise. And so did I." "What do you mean?" He smiled, that same quiet smile that had once made my heart ache. "The people who hurt your father, they're gone. The truth came out. It's over now. I can finally stop running." I covered my mouth with my hand, shaking. "You did it." He nodded. "It took time. But it's done." I took a step closer, my voice breaking. "And now?" He hesitated, looking down at his hands. "Now I'm just a man trying to learn how to live again." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us felt thick with everything we'd lost and everything we'd never said. Finally, I whispered, "Then maybe we can learn together." His eyes met mine, hopeful, uncertain, vulnerable. And then, for the first time since that rainy morning years ago, he smiled without pain. He reached for my hand, and I let him. Outside, it started raining again, softly this time. He looked up at the window, then back at me. "Seems like it always rains when we meet." "Maybe it's a sign," I said, smiling through tears. "A sign of what?" "That no matter how much time passes, love finds its way back." He squeezed my hand gently. "Then I guess we should stop running from it." And for the first time, we didn't. We stood there, hand in hand, as the rain fell outside, quiet, forgiving, endless. He leaned down, and when his lips met mine, it wasn't like in the movies. It wasn't fireworks or thunder. It was something softer, deeper. Felt like coming home. When the kiss ended, I looked at him and whispered, "You once said truth doesn't need defending. I finally understand." He smiled. "And what's the truth now, Mia?" "That I loved you even before I knew why." He laughed softly, brushing his thumb over my cheek. "Then maybe this time we can start without lies." I nodded, tears and rain mixing on my face. And in that quiet little bookstore, surrounded by stories of love and loss, ours began again. This time without fear, without secrets, just two souls who had finally found their way back through the storm. I often think about the rain that brought him into my life, and the storms we had to survive to find each other again. Maybe love isn't about grand moments or perfect timing. Maybe it's about the quiet choices, the sacrifices no one sees, the truth that waits until the world is ready to hear it. Every drop of rain reminds me of that day, of his promise, of the man who taught me that love isn't always loud. It's steady, patient, and sometimes it comes back when you least expect it.